Over 400 million pounds of so-called butter hit American shelves each year. Yet a massive chunk of that isn't butter at all. It's oil blends molded to look like butter, whipped with air color just enough to pass the eye test, then slipped quietly into your fridge with a smiley label and a fake promise. What's worse is how easily it all slides through the cracks. Legal loopholes let these Frankenstein spreads pose as the real thing. Retailers place them side by side with true dairy, blurring the line until most shoppers can't tell the difference or don't realize they should. This isn't just about food anymore. It's about how corporations twist language, how regulation stays conveniently vague, and how the system rewards the lie. Today, we're not just naming names. We're exposing the ones that fooled millions. Watch until the end if you want to know what you're really spreading on your morning toast and what it's been doing behind your back. Number 1, Country Crock. 400 million pounds of butter substitutes are sold across the United States each year. And one of the most aggressive players in that market is a name almost everyone recognizes. That yellow tub sitting in countless refrigerators looks wholesome, familiar, even nostalgic. Yet dairy trade groups have been warning for months that the product is not butter by any legal standard in this country. They cite a federal rule written a century ago, requiring butter to be made from milk or cream with at least 80% milk fat. This brand's plant-based spread contains none of that cream. It is built from palm canola and soybean oils, combined with stabilizers and colorings to mimic the texture and hue of butter. The packaging is a masterclass in psychological framing. Large, friendly letters spell out the word butter. Pictures of melted golden pats over crusty bread draw the eye. A green banner whispering plant-based sits in a corner so small most shoppers never notice. Class actions filed over the last 2 years argue that the made with olive oil and made with almond oil claims are deceptive because the actual formula uses a trace of those oils and a bulk of cheaper vegetable fats. Plaintiffs say they paid more believing they were buying a premium, healthier alternative when they were actually funding a marketing illusion. This is not just an issue of semantics. By placing plant spreads side by side with authentic dairy butter, national retailers erase the distinction. That makes every shopper more vulnerable to spending dairy prices for an oil blend. The corporation benefits twice it saves on costly milk fat and captures a market share that should belong to true butter producers. And because labeling rules contain enough loopholes to drive a truck through, regulators rarely step in until the lawsuits pile up. Think about what that means downstream. Small dairy farms lose contracts, milk prices fluctuate, authentic butter production shrinks. Communities tied to local creameries watch jobs disappear. Meanwhile, your grocery bill keeps climbing, and your food quietly changes composition without your consent. This is how corporate manipulation ripples from the factory floor to the breakfast table. Nutrition scientists warn that these spreads deliver a very different profile than natural dairy fat. Highly refined palm and canola oils are prone to oxidation and can produce compounds that may irritate the gut or contribute to low-grade inflammation. Comment threads online are filled with people puzzled by digestive discomfort, a metallic aftertaste, or a feeling that the texture has changed. Nothing on the label tells them why. They only know something feels off. At this point in the investigation, the natural question is what can replace it on your plate? There are still butters whose labels match their reality. Organic Valley uses cream from pasture-raised cows with no hidden oils. Vermont Creamery focuses on small batch production and transparent sourcing. Both display their ingredients prominently and resist the urge to cloak oil blends as dairy. If you want a flavored option, Minerva Dairy offers hand-rolled butters with herbs where the base is still 100% milk fat. Choosing one of these sends a signal to the market that deception will not be rewarded. Return to the bigger picture. When a plant oil spread can call itself butter, it is not just a branding trick. It is a sign of how powerful companies shape consumer perception and bend weak labeling laws to their advantage. The line between butter and imitation disappears. Shelf placement reinforces the illusion. Advertising money keeps the narrative polished. And all the while, regulators issue soft statements but avoid aggressive enforcement because policy language remains vague enough to protect the manufacturers. This system creates a feedback loop. As consumers unknowingly switch to cheaper blends, authentic butter production drops. With less competition, oil-based spreads grow cheaper to make and more expensive to buy. Profits rise, transparency falls. Health outcomes shift quietly over years, while public trust in food erodes. People start to believe that golden color and creamy mouthfeel are proof of authenticity when they are just the result of additive engineering. Country Crock is not the only brand using these tactics, but it has become the flagship example of how far a spread can stray from the word butter. It shows how a century-old standard can be gamed by clever marketing and permissive oversight. It shows how a single product can tilt the playing field against real dairy and still walk away with a wholesome image. This is why this list matters. It is not about shaming a single tub on a single shelf. It is about exposing the pipeline that takes oils, emulsifiers, and colorants, dresses them up in pastoral imagery, and sells them as something they are not. It is about showing how that trick drains authenticity from your food and wealth from your wallet. As you watch the rest of this video, keep this in mind. What you have been spreading on your toast may not be butter at all. And if one of the most recognizable names in your fridge can twist the rules this far, imagine what the rest of the aisle looks like. Stay with me because the next brand on this list has built an empire on an even older trust. And that trust is cracking. Number 2, Bluebonnet. Start by ditching any false sense of security. What you think is cheap butter from your local supermarket may well be a stealth version of something else entirely. The brand Bluebonnet has long hidden behind that name, masquerading as butter, even though its roots lie in the margarine world. And while many of us graduated past thinking margarine was the heart-healthy answer decades ago, this brand still clings to that illusion through packaging, pricing, and shelf position. Bluebonnet was once a staple in American households, precisely because it offered a lower-cost spread. But cost often comes with compromise. What most people don't notice is that such spreads have historically relied on partially hydrogenated oils, which in the past meant trans fats, those nasty fats linked to artery-hardening heart disease and metabolic strain. Though regulations in recent years closed the door on many artificial trans fats, the legacy remains. What if the replacement oils are still pushing the edge-processed, refined oxidized, just under the legal radar? Its label shouts no cholesterol-reduced fat or heart-friendly. You glance at that and feel good about your choice. But you never see how the packaging dances around the truth. Tiny print somewhere says contains vegetable oil or spread or blend. Most shoppers trust the big type on the front. Courts have taken aim at spreads posing as something they're not, accusing their makers of false advertising when labeling suggests zero trans fat, while using ingredients known to carry trace amounts. That tension between big promises and small print is where the system works hardest to protect itself. Behind the scenes, food corporations exploit the supply chain. They negotiate oil bulk rates, optimize shelf life, and push those products into national supermarkets, placing them right next to real butter. That proximity blurs your judgment. You believe you're choosing a flavor or price variant, but you may be picking an oil blend disguised as butter. That erasure of distinction is a meticulously engineered trick. Meanwhile, dairy farmers lose market share. Real butter producers shrink. The system consolidates profits, centralize, and your buying power dwindles. Health experts emphasize that not all fats are created equal. Ultra-processed oils, even those labeled vegetable, undergo bleaching, deodorizing, fractionating, all processes that stress the molecules. Oxidized lipids and byproducts may irritate the gut, interfere with lipid metabolism, or provoke inflammation. Over months and years, what seems harmless in small doses accumulates. Some consumers report digestive discomfort, metallic aftertaste, or a feeling that something changed after switching to spread brands. Those anecdotal complaints often go unheard until you compare back to real butter again. Let's talk alternatives, the ones that refuse to hide. If you want butter that actually behaves like butter, look for labels where cream or milk fat appear first in the ingredient list. Avoid anything whose base reads vegetable oil emulsifier flavoring. One trusted contender is Organic Valley. Their products come from pasture-raised cows, minimal additives, and full transparency. Another is Vermont Creamery, small-scale, clean labeling, minimal processing. Choosing a brand like this sends a message that your ingredient list should matter, not just your label design. Above all, Bluebonnet demonstrates how branding and regulation intersect. The law allows spreads to claim health benefits if they meet nutrient thresholds. That gives manufacturers wiggle room to market with hard imagery, cholesterol claims, or good-for-you statements. Regulators struggle to keep up, and consumers pay the unseen cost, subtle changes in metabolism, long-term inflammation, the inflation of what butter can mean. This is not a small oversight. When a spread aggressively sells itself as butter, it sets a precedent. If consumers accept one brand bending the rules, the line dissolves across the aisle. When regulation is vague, corporate messaging fills the void. The ripple effects reach far beyond your kitchen. They touch every link in the chain from field to factory to table. Now when you walk into that butter aisle next time, pause at the Bluebonnet label. Think about how that packaging persuades you and how your body will process what's inside. As you watch the next segment, you'll see another familiar name facing its own betrayal. Clues will emerge. Stay alert and stay until the end. You deserve to know exactly what you're spreading on your bread each morning. Number 3, Kirkland Signature. The name Kirkland Signature has betrayed trust more publicly than you think. When a brand once revered for bulk value quietly lost its label integrity, it exposed how fragile confidence really is. In late 2024, Costco was forced to withdraw 79,200 pounds of its own Kirkland butter because the packaging lacked a required warning contains milk. These included both salted and unsalted sweet cream varieties. Though the ingredient list did include cream, the allergen statement was missing from many cartons. Regulators classified it as a Class 2 recall, meaning use may cause temporary or medically reversible adverse health consequences for some consumers. That slide from trusted name to label recall didn't happen overnight. What makes this case remarkable is not simply the error, but what it reveals. A product so ubiquitous that millions trust it casually now faces scrutiny just for failing to meet minimum standards. It underscores how even safe products can hide gaps and how the systems that oversee labeling sometimes crawl. For someone allergic to milk, a missing warning could mean throat tightness, hives, gastrointestinal distress, or worse. The recall did not involve contamination by pathogens. The problem lay entirely in omission of critical information. That omission is precisely what tilts the playing field toward opacity over transparency. Beyond the immediate label issue, there is a deeper question. If a brand as large and as visible as Kirkland can slip on something so fundamental, how many less visible brands skate by with more severe lapses? Distribution chains, private label agreements, and cost pressures all press companies to cut corners across sourcing, packaging, and compliance. In this case, a butter producer failed to keep up with regulatory nuance and paid the price. Yet many consumers remain unaware until recall headlines hit. This episode also cast doubt on a commonly held assumption that private labels are inherently safer or more trustworthy because they carry the retailer's name. Kirkland's branding strategy positions it as value plus reliability. But the recall reveals that reliability is only as strong as the weakest oversight. For those who shop in bulk and count every dollar, that breach of trust stings harder. So what do you do in your own kitchen? First, always check for allergen statements, especially if you or loved ones have sensitivities. Don't assume butter means the packaging got everything right. Second, choose brands that publicly commit to full labeling transparency as a value, not just as compliance. Brands like Organic Valley or Vermont Creamery tend to emphasize clarity in their ingredient panels and allergen disclosures. Those names may cost more, but they refuse to hide under ambiguity. Imagine this playbook repeating itself across everyday staples. A bread loaf missing a gluten statement, a nut bar with no trace disclosure. These seem small until one day you bite into something your body rejects. The ripple effect starts where consumer apathy meets corporate speed. That moment when you realize the butter you used wasn't labeled correctly is a microcosm of larger systemic failure. Yes, this is about butter. But it's also about how expectations for food safety and truth are diluted quietly over time. It's about how a missing line on a label can become a wedge in your confidence. It's about how a name you trusted can slip beneath you. When you reach for Kirkland butter next, pause. Check that carton edge. Does it clearly say contains milk? Does its lot number and best by date match recall notices? Because if you assume nothing can go wrong, that's how brands keep pushing the boundary further. Stay with the next section, because the next brand's deception reaches even into the wrappers. Number 4, Kerrygold. You thought you were escaping the mess. You paid extra, didn't blink at the price tag, and believed every word on that shiny golden foil. Pure Irish butter felt like a safe haven. But that safety, it's not real, it's staged. Recent waves of legal attention have dragged Kerrygold into uncomfortable light. Not because the butter itself was rotten or the cows were mistreated, but because of what wrapped the butter. The foil. That soft, shiny barrier separating your toast from something far more toxic than just salt or fat. A lawsuit accused the brand of using PFAS-laced packaging. Yes, the same forever chemicals you've read about in non-stick pans and firefighting foam now allegedly hugging your breakfast. But here's the trick. It wasn't what they put in. It was what they didn't say. The label didn't whisper a word about it. No warnings, no trace of guilt. Just pure. That one word was enough to pull in hundreds of thousands of households looking for safety and chaos. And it worked. Until someone looked closer. The suit was tossed out. No official admission of guilt, no punishment, just quiet. And that silence, doesn't it feel familiar, like the kind that lets corporations wash their hands before dinner while you're left questioning every bite you take? This isn't about whether Kerrygold butter will kill you. It's about the fact that you don't know what you're eating anymore, even when you pay more for trust. It's about the way words like pure, grass-fed, or imported are carefully arranged to silence your skepticism. It's about marketing teams sitting in boardrooms asking how much can we get away with before they find out. And now ask yourself this. If the premium brands are hiding behind legal loopholes and pretty packaging, what exactly are we rewarding when we treat ourselves? Are we just paying more to be lied to in higher resolution? Kerrygold was once the poster child for ethical dairy. The name evoked rolling hills, small family farms, and golden sunshine. But it also distracted us from the industrial scale behind that image. Ireland exports over 400 million pounds of butter a year. No matter how romantic the story sounds, those numbers don't come from handcrafted anything. They come from factories. They come from logistics, pipelines, packaging contracts, and scale. Massive scale, the kind that requires efficiency over transparency. And here's the most unsettling part. PFAS aren't something your body just digests and forgets. These chemicals can build up, linger in your blood for years, and have been linked to increased risks of cancer, reproductive harm, and immune dysfunction. They've been banned from food packaging in several states. And yet somehow those rules haven't stopped products like this from lining shelves nationwide. How did we let this slide? Because the system taught us to trust brands more than labels. Because a golden wrapper felt safer than a store brand tub. Because we're tired and we want something that just feels like the right choice without having to dissect the fine print. And they know that. So no, this isn't just about Kerrygold. It's about what Kerrygold represents: a broken chain between product and promise. A symptom of a food system where appearances are weaponized, where nostalgia is sold in shiny wrapping, and where your health is measured in quarterly profits. You don't have to be a scientist to know something's off. You just have to feel it, that low buzz of doubt, every time a brand says, "Trust us, we're premium." And if this is happening with a butter that costs nearly twice as much as the others, what does it say about everything else in your fridge? Keep watching, because we're not done yet. One final name still remains, and it might just be the most surprising of them all. Number 5, Epicurean butter. Epicurean butter doesn't sneak in quietly. It wraps itself in gourmet vibes, artisanal jars, herb names, finishing butter labeling. That image seduces you into a false sense of safety. But behind that glow lies a recall that whispers of risk few dare to acknowledge. It started when Wegmans pulled a batch of lemon dill finishing butter because the supplier's dill had possible listeria contamination. The herb, not the butter base, but because it had been integrated, the entire product was recalled. That same butter likely sat in hundreds of kitchens untouched, unsuspecting. Authorities said that Listeria monocytogenes can hit the frail, the elderly, the unborn, causing fever, stiffness, or even miscarriage. Healthy people might suffer digestive symptoms. That recall, though, limited in scale, cracked open the illusion even a finishing butter with a fancy name can carry microbial danger. You see, this brand trades on its extra touch concept, garlic dill herbs. That makes it more vulnerable to contamination from those very additions. The base might be mostly dairy, but one ingredient from elsewhere herb spice oil can undo the whole product's safety. The recall demonstrated that weakness. That's the hidden cost of flavored butter. Unlike plain butter, flavored butter has more points of failure, extra ingredients, more processing steps, more suppliers. Each link in that chain is a gamble. The more complex the formula, the greater the chance something slips through. Distributors, co-packers, herb farms, they all must maintain standards. A lapse anywhere and your butter becomes a vector. Yet marketing shuts your alarm. Gourmet artisan finishing these words lure you into complacency. Then there's how this moves through supply lines. Epicurean Butter distributes its flavored lines to regional and national chains. The same refrigeration, the same trucking, the same storage rooms that handle plain butter also handle flavored products. If temperature control falters, microbial growth accelerates. If herbs are stored moist or touched by workers, cross-contamination becomes a real possibility. A brand with that image shouldn't let those risks manifest, but evidence suggests they do. And now imagine this scaled across your refrigerator, every herb butter compound butter flavored spread in your life. If one can slip listeria via a dill batch, others can slip sulfur compounds, artificial flavoring, oxidation products, or hidden oil blends. This isn't a niche problem, it's a structural one. Worse still is what this says about regulation and oversight. FDA recalls trigger when public pressure or test failures demand action. Many flavored butters fly under regulators' radar until a consumer complaint or internal test forces a response. The rules are weaker once you move beyond plain butter into flavor additions. The margin of safety narrows. Corporations press forward knowing much will never be flagged unless someone looks hard. Now sense the emotional weight. You thought you were elevating your meal. A dab of garlic herb butter, a mellow finish, a richer taste. You felt that was safer than margarine or fake spreads. But what if that extra flavor piece is the Trojan horse you paid for indulgence and got risk? Watch your body too. Some people report subtle reactions, bloating, metallic aftertaste, soft gut discomfort. Others notice aroma shifts in texture. They shrug it off as storage or batch variants. But if a recall flagged just one herb, you should reconsider every jar in your fridge marked herb compound or finishing. This brand's recall is proof that complexity isn't a virtue, it's a vulnerability. It reveals how just a small ingredient from another supplier can render the brand's safety claims hollow. The sauce that makes it taste special is also what makes it fragile. Now consider the social impact. When premium names with niche appeal falter, trust erodes. Every failing flavored butter feeds conspiracy, doubt, fear. People stop believing. They second-guess artisanal labels, local farm butters, even raw cream from trusted sources. That erosion of trust costs us in stress and suspicion, even in ignoring real warnings, because we become numb to scandal fatigue. When your next dinner calls for a dollop of flavored butter, imagine the chain behind it, the herb farm, the processing plant, the packaging line. Imagine how many hands touched it. Imagine moisture cross-contact temperature shifts. That beautiful jar might hide a microscopic hazard. Epicurean Butter's recall is not just a blot, it is a reminder. Gourmet naming doesn't grant immunity. Finishing layers don't override risk. And in a food system where complexity sells simplicity becomes the safer bet. The next brand on this list will show how even plain butter gets twisted in that system. But for now, hold that herb jar in your hand and let your doubt land heavy. Stay close, our final verdict awaits, and it may upend everything you believed about butter. They made us believe butter was simple, but behind that golden foil and friendly tub lies a maze of shortcuts, chemical fillers, and corporate smokescreens. We didn't just lose the butter, we lost trust. When even premium brands bend the rules, when recalls are whispered instead of shouted, when the system rewards illusion over integrity, what are we really spreading on our bread? You've seen what's hiding behind 5 familiar names. You've felt the discomfort, the doubt, maybe even the rage. That's not by accident. It's the system doing exactly what it was built to do. Profit first, clarity last. So now you know. And knowing is a form of power. Use it. Question everything. Flip the label. Challenge what's normal. And when in doubt, walk away. This list wasn't just about butter, it was about waking up.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.